you can take it from, because I only had another 2 slides, but...
Okay, so just to give a context of the Philippines, so this is the presentation sent by Laura David. So it's about linking coastal communities and socio-economic indicators to marine ecosystems. And it's about the case in the Philippines, a small island ecosystem.
You have to press the down arrow here. Yeah. Okay.
So the Philippines, we're about 100 million people now, and it's spread along a very small land area, which is made up of around 7,100 islands. So if you can see, there are really small islands there. And well, aside from that, most of the population are living in coastal areas. So they're very highly dependent on fish for their protein requirements. Is that they are also very vulnerable to sea level rise, since in that region, it will be experiencing many more times sea level rise. So in the case of the Philippines, around 7.4 centimeters per decade, which would mean that at 2050, around 2.9 million people can be flooded. So in terms of their protein requirements, it really contributes a lot for around 43 to 80% of their daily food requirements. And so besides that, in terms of sea level rise, it can also affect the agriculture, so even food supply from the land. So because of saltwater intrusion, and either also because of flooding that from storm surge that can contaminate the soil with salt. So with sea level rise comes also drowning coasts, so where mangroves will be affected, and the mangroves are also important in terms of nursery ground for the fish, as we know. In terms of extreme weather events and storms, I guess there's just a typo there, so it's Typhoon Haiyan. Well, the whole world heard about it, and it is true that we are experiencing more frequent storms and stronger storms now. So in terms of the low-lying areas, coastal communities, we are very vulnerable. So it reached around 7-meter storm surge in a matter of minutes. So it really was, a lot of people were affected, with thousands that were killed. And aside from the extreme weather events, precipitation and rainfall has also been higher. So it affects, in terms of floods, it also affects agriculture in that it destroys the harvest, or it also affects the transport of goods from the farm to the market. Also, aside from storm damage on coastal areas and of course storm damage on the corals, there's also storm damage because of our ill-managed watersheds. So there is high sedimentation on the corals and seagrass that are in our coastal areas. And other than that, in terms of coastal protection, the corals really play a huge part in protecting our coastal areas from wave action, and that with sea level rise, and so in this case, the left-hand side is the case where there are corals lining the coast, so they protect the coastal area. But then, if there aren't any corals there, or if they're destroyed, then the wave action would be much larger on those coastal communities. Other than that, we know the effects of climate change on corals, like the rising sea temperatures and ocean acidification. So there's that feedback that the corals protect the coast, but the corals are also affected by by climate change. So in terms of the importance of these ecosystems, corals, seagrasses, and mangroves also as habitat for the different fish and other marine organisms. There's also a threat in terms of the loss of habitat, since a lot of the fish, also commercially important in the Philippines, depend on these ecosystems as habitat or as nursery grounds. So in terms of the fish that are being caught also in deeper waters, they also depend on these for habitat. So in terms of the sustainable livelihood analysis, we can see that the artisanal fishermen are also very vulnerable. They are, in terms of we can look at the number of fishers per household, how long have they been fishing. So those who are more vulnerable are those who have been fishers for a long time, since that's their established way of life. And also in households that have plenty dependents, so that there goes the number of people per family, and those that have no alternative source of income, and those with special needs. So we made there have been tools that have been developed and have been published. So this is one of them, ICC Change. So I'm going to present some indicators and measures from 3 different tools that have been developed. So this is specific on climate change adaptation, and it considers the different hazards: sea level rise, wave storm surge, sea surface temperature, extreme rainfall. And an example of this is, for example, is the steep or gently sloping. So if it is gently sloping, then it's more vulnerable, because with sea level rise and storm surge, the water goes higher and covers a greater land area as compared to those with where there are steep slopes. So they won't be that much affected by sea level rise or storm surge. Or how much of the coastline is lined by coral reefs or communities. So here, the low, it means it is less vulnerable, and high is the most vulnerable state. So we asked the cover, the health of the habitat. So there's coral reefs, seagrass, and mangroves. And also the composition of that, if it's just single species or more species. And there are also questions when it comes to the fisheries. So this is from TURF, or a tool for understanding resilience of fisheries. So what is the dominant catch? Is it pelagic or demersal? So in this case, since most artisanal fishermen in the Philippines are dependent on the coral and coral-associated fish, that's why the pelagic species are ranked as like lower vulnerability. So it's more, since they're more dependent on the coral reefs as the habitat of the fish. So average catch rate, change in catch composition, the population density, so in terms of how much people are dependent on the fish and fisheries. And we also have questions when it comes to coastal integrity. So in terms of coastal erosion, is it accreting? Is it adding land or eroding? And the reef, if there's a reef flat, and if there are structures on the foreshore, since different structures can change the coastline because there are a lot of solid-based ports in the Philippines. So we can see what's happening here in the right, where on one side it's accreting and the other side it's eroding. So in terms of these, we also find like political boundaries as a consideration, since, for example, if this is a different barangay or town, then they would be the ones affected by the construction of that port. So in terms of the beach vegetation, if there's beach vegetation, or the relative location of the community, so if they're here in the cove, then they're less exposed as compared to when they are there where there's high wave action. So these tools were applied in Cagayan, Silio, Palawan. So it's close to the Tubataha, and it's most areas are flat, and they have a total population of about 7,000 as of 2010. So in terms of exposure, we looked at the wave exposure in the different monsoons, the exposure and frequency of storms, and also sea level rise, sea surface temperature, the rains and tides in that area. And we also looked at the sensitivity. So in terms of the existence, where they live, for example, behind seagrass or mangroves or beach forests. So if they have beach forest in front of them, then they're less sensitive. And in terms of the hard coral cover and the health of the ecosystems where they are dependent on for their fisheries. So this is an example of the household survey that was given. So we asked them how long have they been fishing, how many days a week, dominant catch, etc. So it's relatively high, with as much of 70% of the households actively engaged in long-term fisheries. Also with the number of dependents. So in terms of adaptive capacity, we consider educational attainment, the existence of marine protected areas, if the local government have long-term plans in terms of climate change adaptation. So, and these are all considered and weighted. Their answers are weighted. So we get a summary of the risk and vulnerability of Cagayan Silio to inundation, or risk and vulnerability when it comes to fisheries and food resource. So here, so we see one of the results is that it's seen that the exposure is high in terms of sea level rise and storm and monsoon induced waves, and so that's an example of the tool being used in one of the municipalities in the Philippines. And it was seen that the vulnerability is relatively high, and the recommendation is that long-term adaptation should be considered, including possibly complete relocation of the populace in the long term. So since it was seen that that was the highest factor in terms of their vulnerability. So this same approach can be applied in other coastal communities of Southeast Asia and in the Coral Triangle, but then it's site-specific. So it has to be, well, since it's just a tool and the questions are there and the factors that have to be considered, then you just apply it in that area. You need to know the wave exposure, the frequency of storms, and the result changes depending on where it's applied. So the adaptation measures should be tailor-fitted for the specific area, and no single recipe can be applied for the whole region. So basically, that's it.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Yeah, so basically it really clearly illustrates that those tools, that it gives you a framework for going through the questions and the things you need to look at when you're doing a vulnerability assessment of a community, and just emphasising again that assessing the fisheries and the artisanal fisheries in particular in those small communities in developing countries is a really important aspect. So the tool that was used by Laura and that Aya described is, I've got 2 publications that Laura sent me that actually contains the tool, or a publication that outlines it. So I'll send those around to all of you right now, so you might be able to use that in your project work, just to go through the indicators to look at what sort of things they looked at to determine vulnerability and sensitivities. So again, I really appreciate Aya helping me out here, and that she was brave enough to come up on the stage to do that without any prior warning. So thank you very much. And any questions to either of us? Or, yes?
The Asia study of small life scale, is it published now?
I've got, I think, yeah.
The study of small scale versus large scale fisheries for some countries, the large,
Was that my presentation or
it's
yes,
yours,
this one?
Actually.
Yes,
yeah, sorry.
yes,
So
it is.
Is it published somewhere?
Yes, I got it out of publications.
Okay, so
yes, so I will
please,
forward it to you.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. Everyone? Yeah.
It's a small thing, like regarding the fishery of China was indicated. It's basically the type of consumption behavior also. Because if you see the composition of the Chinese fishery, you will see a lot of seagrasses and scallops and other things dominating rather than the classical fishes, which we say is the shellfish or finfish. Other than that, there are so many other things which are dominating the entire.
Yeah.
So it's basically the consumption behavior that is more motivating than government practices here. If you see the Southeast Asian countries and some other South Asian countries also, the conditions are congenial, but they don't go for such type of agriculture production because there is no consumption pattern for such things.
Yeah.
And even the export market is also not so prospective.
Okay.
So we have to think that angle as well, making the.
Yes, yes. Obviously, it's one picture of a story, and it's not a complete picture. Absolutely, yeah. So, just out of interest, what is India growing in terms of aquaculture? Is that
We don't go for that. It's a very minor, like it's in a very,
very
less
minor
scale. We do the seagrass, seaweeds, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And our data is basically on shellfish and finfish.
Yeah.
And the target market is mostly export oriented, and domestic market is also good, but only for the small fishes it's thriving. The good things are going for export.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. Any other questions before we have the? I can see there's a bag of something or other that's appeared. If there's no questions, then I'd like Lucas to take the floor.
Okay.
Yes, go for it.
Right. You're so lovely. All right. Okay, so I guess the lesson here is you don't criticize the circus. Because if you criticize the circus, you become the circus. And that's...
We should do that for scientists.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Every time you criticize a study, you have to redo it.
You do the study.
Exactly. I like that. That's a good idea. All right. I have a generously loaned deck of mouths. This is actually probably the most awesome deck of playing cards I've ever seen. Every card is Mao. Every card is Mao, including the Jokers. But they're all different Maos. So they do have numbers, but they also have Maos. So, so Rashid, I'd like you to
Oh my gosh.
take a Mao and a Mao.
You're not making me a circus guy, no.
Okay, take your Mao, show it to everyone, make sure everyone sees which Mao he has. Some of them are quotes from Mao too.
I should hide it from him. Actually.
Yeah, probably. Okay, have you got it in? Cool, all right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the deck like that. I want you to say stop. When you say stop, we're going to stop and put the card back in the deck. Does that sound like a plan? Yeah, okay, cool. Stop. Okay, that's
Too late.
slow. All right, here we go. Stop. Okay, you got it. Okay, Rashid on the 3, okay? Okay, 1, 2, okay. This isn't even a magic trick, this is just me messing with you. I'll actually do it.
Stop.
Okay, right, sounds good. All right, take your mouth, put your mouth back in, but like face down. Thanks for bending it like that. I appreciate that. Okay. Rashid, here's what's going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the deck, I'm going to give it a flick. One card's going to fly through the air. It's going to do 3.5 rotations in midair, just like we saw last night. I'm going to catch it. It's going to be your card. And they're all going to go nuts for you. Right? First time sweet, right? All right, ready? 3 of diamonds.
Is it?
Yes, it is the 3 of diamonds. That's all I'm saying. That wasn't your now, was it? No, it wasn't. Don't criticize the service, guys. All I have to do is take that 3 diamonds, give it a little shake like that, it changes magically to the 8 of diamonds. Is that your mount?
Looks like it.
It looks like it. That was not your mount.
No.
Oh, wow, that was so sorry.
This is funny.
This is funny, isn't it? Deck of mows. Your mow could be any mow, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea which one's your mow.
I won't tell you.
You won't tell me. You shouldn't tell me. Let me see. All right. All right. This is the contingency plan. 1 mow. Ace of diamonds. No? Not at all? Not even
One more
considered?
time.
One more time? Okay, in that case, I got nothing. I got nothing. All right, the mouse aren't working for me. Let's try something different. Let's try something different. Really, it wasn't the 8th.
No.
No.
You know, to be honest, you know what?
Yeah?
I couldn't recognize that.
Just look at the back. Was it not? You showed it to people, right?
I showed it.
You went like this. Gee, your mouth was the 8th of diamonds. I know this. Did anyone else see the card?
Oh, yeah.
Video, good.
This is what happens with this little thing.
Rashid, I'm really sorry. This is completely my fault. I was the one who picked you.
Yeah, yes. What a pick, right?
Right? Do we have? Oh, okay. We have video evidence. Oh, you literally never looked at the card, did you? You just seen the.
She doesn't even know it from the video. This guy's playing tricks. She doesn't know what
Yes, was this your card?
Yeah,
Everyone was your card. Wasn't it?
the backside.
All right. Let's try a test here. Let's say your mouth was the 8 of diamonds. Which, by the way, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you it was. The key is to never take your eye off your card. Right? Okay? Yeah. You got this. All right, you're good. Never take your eyes off the Ace of diamonds, right? See your card? See your card? Never take your eyes off the Ace of diamonds. Ace of diamonds goes. Never take your eyes off the card. You take your eyes off the card. Remember that. Look up. That's far too complicated. That's far too complicated. Let's move on to the next prop in my high-budget Vegas-style show. The dental floss from my room. I know it's going to get intense, isn't it? Piece of dental floss. Little piece of dental floss. 1 little piece of dental floss. 2 little pieces of dental floss. Don't worry, you don't need to tell these ones apart.
It's too late.
I know. The 3 little pieces of dental floss. And a bit. 4. And 5. 5 separate little pieces of dental floss. I don't have the cheesy music from the show last night, which is, can you push the, oh, that would be, oh no. It's all right. I do have the cheesy projection behind me. That is the same as the show last night. All right, 4 pieces of floss in a little ball, 1 piece of floss. 1 ball of dental floss. Amazing.
I should take your word for it.
I'm sorry, it's far away back. I usually do this with rope, but I don't have rope. Okay, check it out. 1 ball of dental floss and my magic wand. Once again, a high budget show. Little way to attack. Yeah, exactly. You got it. Little way to attack. Souvenir. All right. I'd like to thank the generous donation of water bottles. However, I quickly discovered that something that the weight shifts in it as you juggle it is really, really difficult.
We like a challenge, come on!
Challenge, don't you? Then I realized I could fill them up all the way, but then I had this like vision of dropping them and exploding all over the audience. This would become a splash zone very quickly. So, lots of oranges. As a heads up, you guys, if you see an orange coming for your face or your laptop, that is not part of the show. Do not treat it as part of the show. Why not? Because I'm asking you to defend yourselves. All right, here we go. 3 oranges. Yeah, thank you. This is cheating.
Where's the unicycle?
Unicycle's at home, sadly. I do have one, actually. Oh yeah, that's a delay. That's not too bad, yeah. It's kind of all right. How about... Oh! I'm not... This is why I'm here today. I failed my audition last night. All right. 3 oranges. Not bad. Not bad. You want more than that. 4 oranges. Don't tell these ones apart either, don't worry. 4 oranges. Here. 5 oranges. This is the part where you need to be like, hands up. Defend the technology. 5 oranges, here we go. You've got me shaking the sheep. Oh, we can do better than that, right? I hope we can do better than that. We might not have to. Almost. We got this, we got it. It's been literally years since I've done this. Those didn't exist anyways. All right, for my grand finale, I'll juggle 3 oranges again, but we're gonna add a little twist. I'm gonna juggle one of these oranges, not lit on fire, but without the key on it. Now, for those of you who are less familiar with the circus arts, this is the equivalent of a tightrope walker not using a safety net. No, not even a little bit. But